All right, now it's time to get back to our top story, which has been all about how India and Kenya have been advancing their ties with a new vision on maritime security in the Indian Ocean region. Apart from 5 MOUs today that have been signed between India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Kenyan President Dr. William Ruto. To talk about it, we have with us Amrit, Lugun, former senior diplomat, former ambassador to Greece, really, and Professor Ajay Kumar Dubey, Chair, Center for African Studies, School of International Study, JNU, that's at Jawaharlal Nehru University. If I could come to you, Ambassador Lugun, first, how do you assess the progress of India-Kenya ties in the light of all that has happened today?
Yeah, the Kenya-India ties in the last 5 to 6 years, in spite of COVID challenges, when things were a little slowed down, it has been very good. And this visit is happening after a period of 6 years. But the last visit was of their former president, Mr. Kenyatta, in 2017, as one would recall. And since then, the ties have only accelerated, and especially in the economic, trade and defense and investment sides, they have grown very well. In the trade side also, we see that there was a little dip when 2014-15.
During COVID.
In India was the largest trade partner of Kenya. It had dipped a little bit, but then again it is picking up, and our exports are a very large part of that figure. Out of $3.4 billion worth, 3.2 are our exports to Kenya.
Yes.
In addition to that, Kenya is very strategically located on the Indian Ocean. So that is why this maritime cooperation is a very well thought of bilateral cooperation, which is beneficial to both the countries. Our Indian Navy, the seismic survey has done a mapping of the coast of Kenya. And also, one good thing about Kenya is that in the last 6 to 7 or 10 years, it has strengthened its democratic credentials in the form of democracy. In the last election, which was fought in 2022, where Mr. Ruto was elected, it was a very thin margin. He just got 50.5% of vote, where his opponent, Mr. Odinga, who apparently was supported by the outgoing president, Mr. Kenyatta, has managed to get 48 nearly 85% of votes, which is very thin. But the court ruled, and everybody agreed it was a free and fair elections, and it was finally accepted. And the violence, which used to be a feature of Kenya in the past, did not happen this time. So it is maturing. Kenya is also among the 10 African countries, heads of state of 10 African countries, which is formed to look after UNSC reform, and India aspires to be a permanent member of UNSC. And before Mr. Ruto, we had the visit of Defense Minister, or they call Permanent Secretary of Defense, in August this year. Before that, in January, our speaker, Mr. Birla, had led a parliamentary delegation to Kenya, and of course later they went to Tanzania. So institutionally they are progressing well. India is the third largest trade partner of UAE currently, after China and UAE, and among the top investors, as per the Kenyan Investment Authority in Kenya, more than 200 companies in various fields, right from ICT, agriculture, motor parts. They have invested in Africa, and pharmaceuticals, of course, plays a very big role in Indian investment. And also the Kenyans go to India for medical treatment. The highest, I'm told, we are informed, and which is very. Then the second and third positions are, I believe, Thailand and Turkey, where the numbers are very low. And as per statistics released, more than 4,000 medical visas were issued last year. I'm talking about 2022
Yes, I'm sure the
by
fact
our
that
mission.
there are four flights, direct flights on a weekly basis
Yeah,
between India and Kenya,
yeah.
Kenya also helps. If I could bring Professor Dubey in now. Professor Dubey, what kind of significance would you attach to the India-Kenya joint vision statement on maritime cooperation in the Indian Ocean region? What kind of complementarities do you think the Indian and the Kenyan navies have which could, address this cause?
First of all, India and Kenya have a very strong ties, and that ties is something that can develop also in defense area as well as in maritime areas. In maritime areas, the Indian Ocean is now involved with Indo-Pacific region in terms of the contestation of power, in terms of protecting India interests, in terms of protecting the sea lane communications. So Kenya being a coastal country and a very friendly country to India, where people of Indian origin are around 80,000 in number, one of the richest section in Kenyan society, very well absorbed and supported by government, playing a very important role in this maritime region. It's a strategic interest that Kenya and India can pursue together. They can pursue together also the interest of against piracy, and they are also they can cooperate in area of harvesting the sea resources. And therefore, this visit boosts not just the maritime cooperation, but it boosts in several areas, including in terrorism, agriculture, and especially to highlight the need of reforming United Nations Security Council, where Kenya, of course, is member of the 10-member African committees. So this is something strategically very important, and Kenya is going to be an important partner. It's an English-speaking country, huge diaspora, and therefore we are looking towards expanding our ties into several areas, not just the economic, but in health sector. 70% of their medical consumption, the requirement is met by Indian product. We are very strong in supplying medicine and medical products over there. We played very important role during the COVID period. And we are also important in terms of agriculture. The import that we do from there is substantially in amount in agricultural products. And we would like to pursue our interest and Kenya interest in promoting agriculture over there for food security of Kenya as well as for India.
Which is why the line of credit as well. Now, Ambassador Lugun, apart from the joint vision statement on maritime cooperation in IOR, the PM also mentioned that the two Indian Ocean neighbors are keen on expanding their defense cooperation. Now, what's the scope there?
Oh, the scope is immense, and that is why after the President Ruto took office in 2022 August, then the first high-level visit since he took over happened to be, as I was mentioning, their their cabinet secretary or their Minister of Defense to India in August this year, where he had very useful bilateral visit with counterpart, our Honorable Minister of Defense, Shri Rajnath Singh, and there the full scope of defense relations, not only joint exercises, but the manufacturing of defense equipment in the exports to Kenya, etc., and joint collaboration were discussed. So this is a very important element, because for Kenya also is situated in a very volatile region. It has a neighbor like Somalia, where always they threatened on the sea lanes of that area. There are a lot of piracy threats. There is right now this next border is Sudan, South Sudan, and Sudan, which is still very volatile with a lot of civil war going on. In fact, Kenya hosts the largest number of South Sudanese who are displaced from there. And then we have further you go west, you go through Rwanda, Uganda, and into Congo, which is another disturbed area. So Kenya is among the countries which is like a pivotal of stability in a very volatile region. So this defense and security and this sea lanes of East Africa, where the increasingly lot of trade is happening through shipments, etc. Further you go north, it goes into the Red Sea, Bab el Mandab. So and for the navies, etc. Of the in that region, so it gives a lot of scope, and that is why if we see in the last 5 to 6 years, defense cooperation has been given a lot of importance by the two countries.
Okay. Now, Professor Dubey, in terms of strengthening ties, what sort of role could acting on the 5 MOUs exchanged today play?
Yes, I think you saw these 5 MOU are in a very diverse area, starting from sports, digital economic solution, cultural exchanges, Bureau of Indian Standards Cooperation, and also an MOU for IGNOU and Open University in Kenya. So you could see that these are very diversified areas, especially the cultural exchange is what in the press conference President pointed out that there is a huge diaspora over there, and we should promote cultural exchanges, and we should use them as a heritage resource to promote the ties between the two countries. Also, the education is something which is very important, and the IGNOU, through its distance education, would be able to promote education in Kenya. And there are a large number of students who come through ITEC and ICCR fellowship, and President mentioned that categorically in his press conference, that they have been very helpful, and they would like further to increase cooperation in this area.
Right. Now, Ambassador Lugun, India and Kenya have annual trade worth around $3.3 billion right now. You mentioned that India was the strongest trading partner of Kenya back in 2014-15. Now, around 200 Indian companies have also had their investments there. If they start trading with each other in their national currencies, which was discussed today between the two leaders, what sort of an impact could that have?
Oh yeah, this will be a very useful exercise. The only aspect we need to keep in mind is, as the figures show, the trade is heavily tilted in India's favor. In fact, more than 90% of the trade between the two countries are India's exports to Kenya. And Kenya's exports, as Professor was also mentioning, mainly pertain to agriculture goods, some maritime products, and some light chemicals, etc. So, if there is the only option or the viable option outside the dollar trade and outside the hard currencies would be the European, will be the rupee trade. And therefore it has to be worked out. The other important country which could play a role, which can be taken in, is that UAE, United Arab Emirates, is among the top 3. In fact, it has more trade compared to India, but I am pretty sure that many of the products going from UAE to Kenya must have been originated from India, but then maybe some value addition. So if the 3 can get together, and can work out, it gives a good scope. Like we had, just to give an example, when with Russia, for payment of their oil imports into India was done in rupee. Later on, the UAE dirhams was added, and which proved to be useful. So if because China is another, of course, big trade partner, but I don't think so we can work out with China. But certainly India, UAE, and Kenya, because they are all or both UAE, India are among the top three trade partners of Kenya. So that definitely can be worked out, and we know that a lot of Kenyans are also nowadays as expatriates working in UAE, which
Okay.
was not so more
Okay, so
than 10
this can
years.
be something that can be taken forward and at speed perhaps as well. Professor Dubey, in terms of how Kenya also wants to be part of the International Solar Alliance, the Global Biofuel Alliance as well, what kind of a showcase can the ties between India and Kenya be for the rest of Africa? Because India has been boosting its engagement with Africa as well in recent years, but Africa has many suitors.
Yes, Africa has many suitors, but India has many strengths compared to those suitors. India has a very old and historical ties. It has a very huge diaspora over there. And India has the capacity in terms of developing some of these new areas like Solar Alliance, where India has already extended a substantial line of credit for them and would like to promote that in African countries, because the environmental issues have become very important all over the world, including in Africa. And Solar Alliance and biofuel cooperation with African country is going to make a big difference. We had already experimented in this area in our India-Africa Forum Summit, where we had extended these kind of facilities. And now with this, India wants to cooperate with African countries to have an initiative on these alternative alliances, which India is leading and playing an important role in that.
Sounds great. And of course, what India has been doing in terms of boosting African presence, global presence as well, making the African Union part of G20 too, that too must have been of note throughout that continent. On that note, thank you so much for joining us this evening to talk about India-Kenya relations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you.
You're welcome.